The Nationals are interesting. I'll talk to former Deputy Prime Minister, National Leader John Anderson on why they have survived, indeed thrived, where Liberals have not. I also want to make a point too there. Goldstein and Kooyong, those postals are falling heavily the Liberal Party's way, 65 to 70%, because a lot of the Orthodox Jews will not vote on Saturday, will have postal voted. So just factor that in. That's why, of course, Goldstein has gone the Liberal way, and I think Kooyong is certainly looking like it might. We're not there yet, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Let's bring in now our political editor, Andrew Clennell. I will get to a whole lot of things, Andrew. There's a grab bag of things you've got your teeth to get into, but let's start with what we know in terms of the government. We understand there'll be a meeting on Friday. Caucus meeting, will that be to finalise the ministry? Do we know when we'll get those sorts of announcements?
Yeah, so my information is the caucus will be on Friday. That will finalise the personnel for the ministry, or perhaps the spots. And then the Prime Minister goes away and divvies out portfolios and rings people, I imagine, Saturday night, and you could see a Sunday announcement and a Monday swearing in, couldn't you? So that's perhaps what we're looking at.
Talk to me about this claim today that the New South Wales right will have to dump a male to make way for Rebecca White. Is that right? Will the right agree to this even?
Well, that'd be, in Yes Minister parlance, very courageous of the Prime Minister, even with his majority, Peter. You know, he's relied on some New South Wales right support, people like Tony Sheldon. And I don't think they'll do that, to be frank. My information is that they're able to say the government whip is a Victorian position. It should be New South Wales. The Speaker's from Queensland. We'll keep our ministries, thank you very much. So I'm told things will land essentially the same. But look, I can't confirm this Rebecca White speculation. If it is true, I think you would agree it's probably part of a deal for her to run. And I think they'll have to find it. So I think they'll have to find it somewhere else than the New South Wales right, frankly.
Yeah, and I made the point last night, of course, and you know this well. The ministry is capped by an Act of Parliament under legislation. It's capped at 30 MPs. That's why it gets so contested in terms of who gets what. Talk to me about the Libs. We've got Angus Taylor and Susan Lee. They haven't confirmed they're running, but of course they haven't denied it either. Andrew Hastie, we know, has said, don't consider me. I don't want to run for leader at this stage. They're both canvassing numbers. Is there any other names here? What can you tell us?
Well, it's only a question of whether Angus was to decide not to run, then Dan Tehan, I think, would. And sort of be the rights candidate. And you talk about right versus left. It's very much like that. And then it comes down to some of these seats. Does Giselle Capterian get up? We know Tim Wilson's got up, but really only in the last hour or two we've established that. So those votes are pretty critical to it all, them being moderates. There's more moderates in there now because Conservatives have lost their seats. I think it's touch and go. I think it's pretty tight, and they're both definitely making calls, but neither, as you've identified, have publicly said they're running, but they're acting as if they're running, and their advocates are texting me enough to suggest that they're running when I run stories on it. I think it's going to be a really tight contest. What is interesting to me, Peter, is a lot of Liberals kind of outside that party room who contacted me about it really like the idea of Andrew Hastie. So whether that's something down the track, and what we have here is a leader for a year or two and see how they go, and maybe that's a possibility down the track, I wouldn't discount that. And maybe you get Hastie, Zoe McKenzie's deputy, something like that. It's a more sort of telegenic team, not that it should be all about that, but it has some aspect than Angus Taylor and Susan Lee, who frankly own a bit of this defeat, especially Angus, unfortunately for him. I think I heard your editorial. I think what's against him more than the women-man thing is the fact he was near some of these total gaffes in the campaign, like allowing Labor to run saying you're increasing you're running with a tax increases because they didn't support the tax cuts. Now, I reported that people were saying, well, Angus, was in the lockup, decided that with Dutton. It was quickly pointed out to me by Taylor supporters Susan Lee was also in the lockup, which was interesting. Then there's the work from home debacle. And Angus Taylor supporters telling me very clearly this was Jane Hume in consultation with the Leader's Office. And the first he heard about it was when he was about to drop it to the Fin Review. So he's distancing himself from that. But then, you know, a Lee supporter said to me, well, he had 12 interest rate rises. He didn't even come up with a real economic plan that cut through. So that's what's hurting Angus a bit. That will hurt him in question time. We know that if he gets the job. Otherwise, I think he'd be a firm favourite, to be honest, because he's got more experience in those economic portfolios. He's been Energy Minister. But Susan Lee's had a couple of interviews where she's stuffed up, to be frank. So those are the sort of considerations that are emerging at the moment. It is actually the first, if it happens, the first leadership vote for an opposition leader since 2013, Albanese and Shorten, which was that kind of 3-month process. I just figured that out today because, you know, last time Dutton didn't have a Frydenberg to go against. Shorten stepped aside, so Albanese got it. So that's very interesting after we had a spill every 5 minutes that we haven't had one of these for an opposition leader for 12 years.
We will watch it all closely, and of course you're right to point out it depends on who wins the seats coming forward now. That a number of them are moderates who are fighting for their lives, but if they make it, they get into the party room, that changes the complexion very much.